Today, we're talking about how to engage Gen Z and Gen Alpha in a way that actually matters. So first, keep it sincere. Sincerity is countercultural right now, so don't overthink it and don't feel like you have to put on a show. We're seeing Gen Z tune out when church starts to feel overly polished, overly performative, or overly relatable. And it's not because they're cynical, it's because they've been conditioned to question what's real. Social media, pop culture, this postmodern age, it's led to many young people feeling discouraged or like they're being sold to. Authenticity is the antidote. This is a generation that's incredibly well-informed. They've grown up with access to more data, opinions, and worldviews than any before them. And because of that, they can spot forced language or spiritual posturing almost instantly. They're not looking for the coolest pastor. They're looking for the most sincere one who's grounded, one who talks like a real person, one who's not afraid to admit they don't have all the answers, but will challenge them anyway. You don't have to impress them. You just have to mean it when you say it. Second, build spaces, not just programs. Digital content can only take them so far. We're seeing more and more that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are connected online, but deeply disconnected in real life. They're craving community. Not hype, not a jam-packed youth calendar, just belonging. That means the goal isn't to keep them busy, it's to make them feel known. Open spaces where they can ask honest questions, real conversations with adults who take them seriously, moments of stillness in a world that constantly tells them to keep scrolling. Whether it's small groups, leadership teams, or just unstructured time after service. What matters most isn't the format, it's the presence. Third, invite them into something bigger than themselves. One thing we hear often from churches using SecureGive is this: when the mission becomes clear, young people show up. They don't want to just support a church budget. They want to build something that matters. This generation is deeply cause-driven. They're drawn to churches that are feeding the hungry, mentoring kids, serving neighborhoods, and doing the work of the gospel beyond Sunday morning. So whether it's giving, serving, or leading, tie it to purpose. Show them how generosity changes real lives, and then invite them to be a part of it. They're not passive members. They're wired for impact. So don't be afraid to challenge them to serve. Fourth, challenge tactful use of technology. We can't talk about Gen Z or Gen Alpha without talking about technology. But the answer isn't just more digital. We're seeing that digital experiences have to lead somewhere, especially if the digital experience becomes a distraction, like we talked about last week. If your giving experience, your content, or your events live entirely online without a clear next step into a relationship, it stops short. So think about technology as a bridge, not just a destination. Make it easy to take action. Give, sign up, share, respond. Make sure it points them toward a real person and a real community that invites them into something deeper. Finally, don't try to impress them. Be present with them. This generation isn't looking for perfection. They're looking for people who are consistent, who are present with them, who are willing to listen. When a church stops trying to win young people with hype and starts inviting them into honest relationships, they feel welcomed home. Gen Z doesn't need more content, they need connection. And that connection starts with a leader who's willing to show up sincerely and speak with purpose. Because in a world of distractions, a church that feels real is the most compelling thing they'll ever encounter. Why does this matter right now? If your church shows up with honesty, presence, and purpose, you're stepping into a sacred opportunity to lead a generation back to what's real. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.